Some ASP.NET pages can be slow to load, especially those that rely on complex database queries. One way to mitigate this problem is to enable caching. When caching is enabled, ASP.NET will not recreate the page's HTML code every time the page is requested. Instead, it will display a copy of the last version of the page. Displaying the cached copy of the page can be much faster than running the page's C# code and rebuilding its HTML code. You will apply caching to a page in this lesson. To begin, open the Textland project from your Sample Files folder. Now view timezones.aspx in your web browser. This page displays the current time in several different time zones. After a few seconds, click your web browser's refresh button to refresh the page. The page's code is executed and the times are updated. Close your web browser now. You're now going to enable caching on the timezones.aspx page. Open timezones.aspx in Source View and add the following code to the top of the page just after the page tag. %@output cache duration equals 60 vary by param equals none. This code tells ASP.NET to keep a cached copy of this page for 60 seconds. This means that the page's HTML code will only be regenerated if it has been at least 60 seconds since the last request for the page. When vary by param is set to none, as in this example, ASP.NET will always load a cached copy of the page if one is available. You might want to change this behavior if the page changes depending upon a parameter. For example, you might have a page that uses a product ID query string parameter that can be used as follows: products.aspx product ID equals 10. In this case, you would want a separate cached copy of the page to be made for each possible value of product ID. You would do this by setting vary by param to product ID. To automatically create cached copies for all parameters, set vary by param to star. As well as using the output cache tag to apply caching to a page, you can also change caching settings by using the page.response.cache property in C#. This allows you to enable and disable caching using C# code. Now that caching is enabled, view timezones.aspx in your web browser again. Once again, the times are displayed. After a few seconds, press your web browser's refresh button to refresh the page. Now wait a few more seconds and refresh the page again. Instead of updating the page, ASP.NET uses a cached copy. This page will not update again until 50 seconds have elapsed. You might be wondering why the page wasn't cached after your first request. The get verb is used when you first request the page. If you then post back or refresh the page, the post verb is used. For more on verbs, see Lesson 8.6. ASP.NET creates a separate cached copy of the page for each verb. When you first loaded the page, a cached copy of the page was created for the get verb. When you refresh the page for the first time, a cached copy was created for the post verb. When you refresh the page for the second time, ASP.NET saw that a cached copy existed for the post verb and displayed it. Because a cached version of the page is being used, none of the page's C# code runs. If this page contained intensive C# code or slow database queries, this could significantly improve the user's experience. The cached copies would be much faster to load, as they would not need to rerun any code. You should also consider that there may be a large number of other users accessing this page. By caching the page, you will drastically speed up access for all users. Caching is not always the best choice, as you can see in this example. The times shown on the page may be up to 60 seconds away from the actual time. Caching should not be used when real-time results are important. There are two ways to create a page that is only partially cached. The first option is to create a web user control and add the output cache tag to its code. If you do this, only the contents of the web user control will be cached. You learned about web user controls in Lesson 8.4. The second option is to enable caching just as you have in this lesson, and then use the substitution control to create areas that are exempt from caching. You will learn about the substitution control in Lesson 8.11. Close your web browser now, and close Visual Studio. You've now completed Lesson 8.10, Enable Caching.